former congressional press assistant to Matt Gaetz, currently a producer and pop culture analyst for The Real Story with Riley Lewis on One American News Network. But this is my podcast, my opinion. Today, we are discussing the massive web of corruption and what has been described as industrial-scale fraud that spans from the Midwest to the West Coast and beyond, targeting your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And we're asking the questions the media seems totally uninterested in asking. We are breaking down how the ghost daycare scheme that drained millions in Minnesota is now being exposed in California. Herb Morgan is running for state controller of California. He told Riley Lewis this about the amount of fraud in California on The Real Story. Take a listen.
Looking at California, how widespread is this problem?
If you think of Minnesota as the freshman team, we're Division I college. Okay, so we have obviously a much larger economy, much larger population, much wealthier state. I estimate that the number is around 250 billion.
My guest today, founder of Restore San Diego and private investigator Amy Reichert, teamed up with Nick Shirley to uncover the fraud and abuse in the not-so-golden state. They didn't just look at the spreadsheets, they showed up to these so-called California daycare centers to find out where the kids actually were. And surprise, surprise, there were none. The obvious question is, what did public officials like Gavin Newsom and Tim Walz know about this fraud? And exactly when did they know it? We are also shifting gears to demand transparency. We will discuss the ongoing fight for accountability regarding the Epstein files and why we haven't seen any arrests, aside from what's come out of the UK with former Prince Andrew. All that and more as we get to the facts, and we'll do it all right now on the ChrisInformation podcast. 2023, Vulture, which is a fitting name for an entertainment news outlet,
Joining us now, Chris Cella.
For me on Capitol Hill and from the halls of Congress, he is on top of all the stories. Don't miss the ChrisInformation podcast.
Joining me to discuss the rampant amount of alleged fraud in California and beyond is the founder of Restore San Diego and licensed private investigator, Amy Reichert. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
I want to talk to you all about the great work you've been doing with Nick Shirley, but first, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, how you got into the game, and of course about your organization.
Lifelong Californian. I was never politically involved. I've got a degree in political science from San Diego State, and I like to joke that San Diego State was the best 10 years of my life. So never really used my political science degree, but I did become a licensed private investigator in the state of California. And it wasn't until 2020 when 3 buildings burned down 2 miles from my house during the BLM riots of 2020 when I realized that these whole lockdowns thing were a joke. They were telling us to stay inside and not go outside, and yet they were completely saying that riots were okay, and they weren't spreading COVID. So, yeah, that's when I woke up.
But you can burn down a building. You can burn down a church. You can't go inside of it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Basically, those were their rules.
Yeah, it was pretty tyrannical. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay. So that's when I woke up and I founded Reopen San Diego, and we would have rallies, and we wanted to reopen churches and schools and businesses. And then a group of firefighters and cops came to us and they said, the city of San Diego is about to fire us. And so we filed a federal lawsuit and we protected their jobs, and we got the vaccine mandate overturned.
That is incredible, especially here in San Diego. To tell, I mean, it's almost too hard to believe, because California was the epicenter of the COVID lockdowns, restricting how many people you could have in your home, pushing the vaccine mandate to be able to go into a grocery store. It was insane, and so thank you for all your efforts on that front, and on behalf of pretty much all of California, or all of San Diego, certainly, thank you. So anything else you want to tell us about your organization and what you guys have done since COVID, and what you guys are doing, what your future plans are?
Well, since we reopened San Diego, what we found out after the lockdowns was really how much California was declining and pretty rapidly under Democrat policies. And so I founded Restore San Diego, which is a political action committee. And we do different calls to action regarding different policy things that they're trying to get over us. And we have regular events. And of course, I have my social media handles that I use for my investigative journalism. And just last month, I started finding the same patterns that Nick Shirley found in Minnesota. And that's when we were able to get Nick Shirley to come to California.
Yeah, so I really want to get into this with you, especially like the process. But first, this is thrown around a lot in the media. This talk of industrial scale fraud in Minnesota and now in California, and other states as well. Washington State, it's popping up all over the place. But so, can you just kind of break that down? Like, I mean, when they say industrial scale fraud, I know pretty much every corner of the social services market has been affected, but yeah, kind of tell us what that means.
So I started looking into daycare centers, the learning centers right here in San Diego. And I started alphabetically. I never focused on any one group. And I was able to find within the first hour 3 licensed daycares that showed the same patterns as Minnesota. So up to 39 kids enrolled and 0 kids present. And this wasn't me saying this. This was the state of California state inspectors finding this. And to your question, industrial scale fraud, well, it's pretty easy if you are a daycare owner and you want to falsify records. Well, we had a situation right here in San Diego where the DOJ shut down a learning center, and the president, who just happens to be Somali, and he owned the center called UMI Learning Center. What he did is he said he had 150 kids in his learning center, and then he had an arrangement with the parents where he would pay them $200 a month for them saying that they were going to his learning center. Well, he was busted by the feds, and he is now serving 27 months in prison, federal prison. He has to pay back 3.7 million in restitution. So that gives you an idea. That's just one learning center where 3.7 million went to fraud, waste, and abuse. So from the things that I've been seeing right here in San Diego with these licensed daycare centers that have, 39 kids enrolled, but 0 kids present when state inspectors arrived, that's when Nick Shirley and I decided to go knocking on some doors and ask some questions.
And how were you greeted when you knocked on these doors?
So let me just tell you, the first place that we went to, it's called Medina Learning Center. And Medina Learning Center, when we went there, lo and behold, we found out they had misspelled the name of their own daycare center on their sign. Their sign said Madina Learning Center. So, just imagine you're a parent and you're going to put your kid in here. You wouldn't even be able to call up state licensing and give them the correct spelling of the name. They wouldn't be able to find it. So in this case, I had pulled 9 state reports from the Medina Learning Center, and they showed just widespread health and safety code violations. Things like, not having enrollment records, for one. So they would have 39 enrolled, and 2 weeks prior to having 39 enrolled, they were busted for having an assistant director of the program, when the state arrived, said, hey, you don't have a background check. So they were fined $4,000. And then 2 weeks later, when the state came back, of course, that assistant director was gone, but enrollment had tripled, but they still had the same amount of kids when the state showed up. So when we went out there, we just imagine you go to this place, Medina Learning Center, and it's in this strip mall, and there's a big trash dumpster in front, and there's trash overflowing. And Nick Shirley is filming, the parking lot and all the trash overflowing. And that's when I said to him, "Hey, Nick, there's somebody moving in the trash." And it was a homeless person sleeping just steps away from this daycare center. So we were able to knock on the door of this place, and we just said, "Hey, we want to enroll little Joey in the program." And they didn't give us anything for enrollment. They wouldn't give us any applications to fill out. In fact, one of the ladies, and she never identified who she was and why she was there, she said, "Let me go to my car." So she went out to her car, and instead of coming back with enrollment papers, she came back with a business card. So, you know, uh, to me, that's a red flag that if you're a legitimate daycare business, that when people come and this is in a strip mall, and they knock on the door, and these are parents asking for papers to enroll their child, and you don't have any.
I mean,
So that was one of the experiences we had.
it's just it's so mind-boggling to me, just the complete lack of oversight. Um, do you think, and I know we're just speculating here, but how could the city officials and or Gavin Newsom? Do you think he was aware of this kind of fraud that was going on? And at any point, do you think he did anything to stop it, or did he benefit from it? What's your take?
I think that the system is set up to fail. And Gavin Newsom's reaction to me posting on X was very interesting. So, from Gavin Newsom's governor press office accounts, and by the way, this is run by paid trolls. So, we taxpayers in California pay for his staffers to troll other people on X and post at the Gavin Newsom governor press office. So he posted about me that I was a pseudo investigator and one of Donald Trump's stooges. So I can't speak to did Gavin Newsom know about this, but wouldn't if you're governor of a state and you want absolute transparency, why would you want to name call people? Wouldn't you say, "Oh, hey," call them up and go, "Hey, Amy, I see that you're making news. Why don't you, share with my office your concerns?" But that's not how we were treated at all. We
Yeah,
were
or
treated like we were enemies.
yeah, or how about thank you for discovering that this is clearly not a daycare center. We're going to investigate it. That's what a true leader would do, someone who had scruples and, morality, but, Gavin Newsom is completely void of any of that, and pretty sure we all know that. So, which kind of brings me to the California gubernatorial race. I want to touch on that really quickly. So right now, Steve Hilton is polling in first place, followed closely by, I believe, Eric Swalwell. I don't know how, but and then he's followed closely by Chad Bianco. So we could potentially be looking at because of the way California does their primary, it's a jungle primary, 2 Republicans on the ballot. But what are your thoughts, and who would you like to see? Who do you think is the best leader for California?
So I haven't endorsed anybody in the governor's race. I'm very interested in this race, of course. The only candidate that's reached out to me has been Steve Hilton, and he appointed me as special investigator to California Doge. And so we've been working every single day to expose the fraud, waste, and abuse right here in California. And we just had our first release about fraud, waste, and abuse. And wait to hear this one, Chris. So voters, when voters approved the sale of cannabis so that it was legal in California, voters also approved that there would be a tax on cannabis and that this tax would be used for drug prevention, specifically youth drug prevention. Well, what California Doge just released was there's 2 nonprofits. One's the Jakara Foundation and one is Elevate Youth. And instead of these funds being used for drug prevention, they were used for community organizing, they were used for voter registration, They were not used for drug prevention at all. It's just obscene what is being done to the California taxpayer. This is where the fraud is.
Yeah, and I wonder which party they were registering people to vote for.
Exactly. I don't think they were seeking out Republican youth to
Yeah,
elevate.
yeah. They weren't looking at turning point kids, for sure.
No.
But just this blatant and obvious just disdain for the American taxpayer is so clear with these people, and it really is horrific. And I hope that California does get some relief in the form of a Steve Hilton, a Chad Bianco. They're both great candidates, and honestly, I think a Republican. I think the first time or last time a Republican won the gubernatorial race was in like 2011 in
Arnold.
California. Yeah,
It was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
yeah, the governor. Wow,
Yeah.
a long time ago. So, do you think that the Golden State can be golden again? Can it return to its former glory?
Absolutely. I don't, but I'm just going to be honest with you about this governor's race. It's going to be tough. We don't have voter ID right now in California. So there's that. But there's also just the reality that California is not red. I know that's not what people want to hear, but right now, when you look statewide for voter registration, 45% of registered voters in California are Democrats, and only 25% are Republicans. And I've watched it firsthand over the past 5 years in particular. I've watched my Republican friends and family leave the state because they've watched it decline here and how expensive it is. People just want to be able to own a single family home, and you can't in California. Not to mention having $5 gas. Thank you very much, Gavin Newsom. So he hasn't made it, the highest energy costs too. So while Gavin Newsom is only has like a 40, he has like a 45% disapproval rating, I believe, which is pretty high. Um, for whatever reason, I think maybe it's because he just talks about how much he hates Trump all the time,
Exactly. Yes,
that
he
he's
fuels
beginning
the
to pick up
anti-Trump.
momentum.
Yeah, he fuels the TDS hysteria. And
So I just don't know if it's
plays
going to
well
be
for him.
enough to get a Republican in office in the governor's mansion. I just don't know if it's going to be able to happen.
Yeah, and that's I kind of agree with you. I think it's an unfortunate reality that this state has just become so incredibly blue. But I wanted to ask, so clearly, they are robbing us blind. They are defrauding us through, all these different social services programs. But you touched on another thing. You touched on the integrity of our elections. I know, Nick and you guys have been doing some work on that. Can you talk about what has been exposed in terms of the voter fraud? People who are 140 years old voting in elections, things like that. Little anomalies that we've heard about. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it seems like our voter system in California is on the honor system. I guess it's just kind of pinky swear that it's you when you sign your name. It's illegal to show ID right now when you vote in person. So they won't even allow you to show ID. So right here in San Diego County, for example, the San Diego County Registrar of Voters, they send out 1.9 million mail-in ballots every time we have an election. 1.9 million. So one of the things that Nick Shirley was able to find when he was here, he would go to one of these like postal annexes place that you see everywhere, and it was kind of funny. He would show up and he would have the name of the person, and he was like, "Oh, Gloria is 126 years old, and she lives inside one of those little boxes at the postal annex." And the thing is you
Oh my
can
goodness.
use a PO box to register to vote, but only as a mailing address. You cannot use like a postal annex saying that's where you live.
Right.
So
Right.
as you can imagine, that leaves the door wide open to fraud. And then Nick Shirley also went to different people's houses and he said, "Oh, hello, is Gloria here?" And this man answers the door, and Nick says, "Oh yeah, Gloria is 126 years old." And then the guy's like, "No, she's not. She's a year older than me." And then Nick says, "Well, it says here she's voted in 55 elections." And he said, "No, she hasn't." That's scary.
Yeah, that is, I mean, goodness gracious. It really is. It really is. Like you said, it's an honor system. It's become a joke. And the fact that the Senate is holding up the Save America Act, which is the
Yeah.
bill that could really actually secure our elections once and for all through Congress and not through, Trump has done everything he can with executive orders. Congress has just been limp-wristed and failed to act so many times. But I just don't understand
Agree.
how they could be holding this bill up. Republicans in the Senate, John Thune. I mean, what's going on?
Well, today I was at a luncheon and Senator Rand Paul spoke, and he answered a question from the audience about the SAVE Act. And he said that he didn't think it was going to pass. So they've only been able to get one Democrat to vote for the SAVE Act so far. This is just breaking news as of today, him saying this. And everything that I've read, we're going to need 60 senators to pass the SAVE Act. So
Yes,
I don't see
because
it
they won't
happening
because
with
they
only
won't do away
one
with the
Democrat on board.
filibuster. It's
Hmm.
absurd because they're keeping that filibuster, and the second the Democrats get power, it's gone. They're going to only need a
Oh, yeah.
50. They're going to only need a majority. They're not going to need 60 votes, and there goes anything we try to get through, or anything we want to stop them from getting through. So it's
And
yeah.
and AOC as president. That was one of the things that Rand Paul actually mentioned a couple times. He said, just imagine, you know, the next Democrat president is AOC.
Yeah,
Pretty scary.
it's a terrifying thought. AOC as president, or even just with any more power than she currently has.
Hmm.
So I do want to move on to the Epstein files. We have seen now a release of 3.5 million documents. People like Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, so many others. Titans of industry. Lawmakers, all sorts of people being caught up in this. Some of the most powerful people in the world. My question, I guess, is Prince Andrew was recently arrested, I think just the other day, by British police. It had nothing to do with the Department of Justice. I'm frustrated because it's been now 3 weeks since the documents came out, and there hasn't been talk of really any even investigations, let alone indictments for these criminal deviants who took advantage of some of the most vulnerable people on earth.
Yeah, and I know they said that they completed putting all the documents that they're going to put out. And I know that there was a lot, but I I think there's much worse. I think there's things that we haven't seen that are much, much worse. And the very fact that when I saw that Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, was arrested, I was like, yes, finally, we have an Epstein arrest. And then when I looked at the charges and why he was arrested, I'm like, oh, he wasn't even arrested over anything having to do with minors. It was having to do with passing, I don't know, was it like state secrets or something?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Things that classified information that he
Mhm.
wasn't supposed to. So
Yes.
I think people are genuinely frustrated, Chris. They're like, no arrests as usual. The Epstein files have been released, and sure, there were some names, and there's been some CEOs that have had to resign. I know I actually went into the Epstein files and I searched San Diego to see what I could find.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Please tell me about that.
So when I searched San Diego, I could see that Epstein had been to San Diego quite a few times, visiting people here. And there was one where it was Noam Chomsky. And Noam Chomsky, he's like a well-known, he's very old now, but he's a linguist and, in those like left-leaning circles. And apparently him and his wife received hotel upgrades from Epstein, and just, my gosh, selling your integrity for a dish rack. They were so excited. Oh, thank you for the dish rack. And these were all gifts that they took from Epstein, this was in the mid like 2010s, like probably around 2015. So they knew exactly who they were dealing with at
Right.
that point. And then Deepak Chopra, that's of course made a lot of news about some of the things that he's said about something about girls. I don't know the exact quote, and I don't even think I want to say it. Anybody can that's listening can Google what he actually said about girls.
Yeah, it is. I mean, some of this stuff is just it's so dark. It's like it's hard to even like imagine. Like I think this guy's name is Leon Black. He's this venture capitalist, and he there was this girl's diary found talking about him brutally just beating her, biting her, then sexually abusing her. A girl with mental disabilities. It's so hard to fathom how sinister. And then there's all this talk of what is it? Jerky as code for
Hmm.
the flesh of
And
children.
pizza.
And pizza, right? Yeah, pizza. I mean, yeah, you think all these people were going to Epstein's Island for pizza parties? Is that what we're supposed to believe? Are we that stupid that you think we're just, I mean, because they've released these files, clearly many of them redacted, although they didn't bother to redact the name of a victim, and they did redact the name of a co-conspirator, Les Wexner. So they've released these files now, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, clearly there's more to this. There's got to be
There's more.
something damning that within these millions of files that could obviously pin Bill Clinton or Bill Gates or one of the other elite to having sex with a minor. I'm sure it is in the files, and I just don't know why they don't want to. If they don't want to release it, at least prosecute them for the crimes. And if they can't release the files, prosecute them for the crimes if you know that they did them and can prove it. But again, it's just the lack of accountability, and that's what Trump ran on. And I think Trump wants accountability. I think it's his FBI and his DOJ that are letting him down in a lot of ways, and it is frustrating to me. For example, I want to pull this up real quick. This is a tweet. Says so that the DOJ released footage from Jeffrey Epstein's cell that appeared to hint at him trying to commit suicide. Metadata shows that the footage from Jeffrey Epstein's cell was released. It was actually edited with Adobe Premiere, stitched together from 2 clips, and saved 4 times last year, and then released to the public. So and Kash Patel went on Bret Baier not even a week ago and said that he believed firmly that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. And so, I mean, first of all, do you believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
Yeah, I don't even know what to believe anymore. There's been different reports of how the kind of injuries that he sustained and during his autopsy that they were able to find during his autopsy that it couldn't have been suicide. So, but I'm one of those people, I do want to see, I have my doubts, but I just don't want to like say, yes, he did or yes, he didn't, unless I have conclusive proof. That's just the investigator
The
in me.
investigator in you. I totally get it. My father's a lawyer. He's the same way. So I want to also ask you about, because there are, Nick Shirley, he didn't have all the resources of a national news outlet, but yet he was able to uncover all this fraud. You don't have the resources of a national news outlet, yet you have been able to uncover all this fraud. So for people who maybe want to go out and expose this kind of stuff, how would you like what advice would you give to people who might be afraid or, just not know where to start?
You know what? I will never forget. It was after those 3 buildings were burned down just 2 miles from my house, and, public health officials went from, you know, if, if you go outside, you're gonna kill grandma, that kind of rhetoric, to, no, riots and protests are perfectly okay. And I remember standing in my kitchen, and I'm just going to be like honest with you, like where I was emotionally. I was starting to feel a little depressed about the world. And that's when I realized I wasn't depressed. I felt powerless. And I remember like having this picture in my mind of me, but me 20 years from now. And looking back at me now saying, why didn't you ever speak up when you had the chance? And then I remember thinking of me when I was 18 years old, looking at me now and saying, I thought we were really going to be somebody and do something, when we grew up. And I was like, I just remember like just outstretching my arms in the middle of my kitchen, and I'm like, okay, God, I know I'm supposed to do something. I just don't know what. Show me what to do. And I didn't know what my next steps were. I had no idea that just in a few months I would be having the very first, reopen San Diego rally, and that we would be suing the city of San Diego over vaccine mandates the next year in federal court. But here's one thing I did know standing in that kitchen. I remember before I made that decision to ask God, what should I do? I was thinking how painful it would be to start speaking out. I was working full time in marketing in an industry that was all relational based. Like you didn't talk about politics even on your personal Facebook page. But then I remember thinking that it would be more painful to stay silent. And that's when I cried out to God. I'm like, I don't want to live a life of quiet desperation anymore. To me, just dying and staying silent out of fear just didn't seem like any life at all. And so that's how I would encourage people, just take that next step. For me, I'm a believer in Christ, and for me, I asked God what to do, and he made a way for me. And I think he'll make a way for anybody else who just humbly asks that question too. What's my next step? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, wow. That was a barn burner. That was powerful. I gotta say, and it definitely resonates with me personally because I, at a point in my life, felt I would say, yeah, I felt hopeless, powerless. Didn't know really what I felt because I was an empty void. I was an opiate addict, and I remember God just literally a voice in my head saying, look, you don't need to live your life like this anymore. There is a way forward that doesn't have to be like this. And it just, my whole worldview changed in an instant. And I didn't know that I would be getting into politics. I'd always been interested in politics, but never to the point where I thought I would make a career out of it. But sure enough, a few months after I got sober, I got really into the 2016 election cycle. Trump versus Hillary, what a time to get into politics, and those debates and all that stuff. Because you'd be in jail, classic. But and I just remember thinking, wow, this stuff is interesting. And Tucker, who's been, an inspiration of mine, I remember watching his show and thinking, wow, this guy, he does the news, but he does it in an interesting way that's unique that I've never seen before. I want to try to, kind of take that style, make it my own, and try to do something like that. So, yeah, that's a very, very, very powerful message. And I do thank you for relaying that to our audience. One more topic I do want to ask you about, since it's hot in the news right now. People are saying we might be going to war with Iran this weekend. I know you are not a foreign policy expert at all. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I'm sure you have feelings and thoughts and concerns. So, we have sent two huge naval carriers to the region. Seems like we're gearing up for an offensive. How do you feel about what could potentially happen?
Well, I've said this very vocally on my own social media. I do not want, I've got two sons, and I do not want my children dying in the Middle East. Not for Iran, not for any other country in the Middle East. And today, somebody asked Senator Rand Paul about what's going on in Iran and asking if he thought, war was likely. And they also asked him if he thought that the president should seek, congressional approval. And of course, he's a man that his his true north is the Constitution of the United States. Whether you agree with Rand Paul or not, that's a man of principle who
Absolutely.
strongly supports individual freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. So here's what he said, and I agree. He said, you know what I'm going to decide upon? He goes, at the end of the day, would I send my own son or daughter to fight a war against Iran? And he's like, and would I send your sons and daughters to a war in Iran? He said, so I don't know how I would vote if things changed, but at this point, no. I would not vote for war in Iran. I would not send my children to die there, and I wouldn't send your children to die there. And I feel the same way.
Yeah, and I'm very much, I'm not an isolationist. Of course, I don't think Iran should have a nuclear weapon, but I also do not want to see a single American, soldier die in the name of a faraway country that is no real threat to us. So I really just want to now thank you so much, Amy, and give you the chance to, kind of plug your handles, your organization, and what is coming next. If you can give us a sneak peek of, what you've got cooking investigative-wise.
Well, any day now, Nick Shirley is going to drop the California daycare video. So I expect that to happen any moment. So hang tight for that one. And if you want to be there the minute that it gets released, just go to my social media handles. I'm on X, Amy FOR San Diego. That's Amy for San Diego. And I also have the same handle on Instagram as well. And I've got about 70,000 followers on X and about 90,000 followers on Instagram. And I drop it like it's hot all the time.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for your time. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to sincerely thank Amy again for coming on the show and sharing the incredible work she and people like Nick Shirley are doing. It is up to independent investigators and real journalists, not the claptrap, talking point, legacy media, when public officials look the other way while our taxpayer dollars are being funneled into phantom daycares and being sent to God knows where, and when the elite are protected from accountability. Cases like the Epstein files, when we have case after case of savagery right in front of our noses, we have to be the ones demanding answers. If you want to keep fighting back and staying informed, here's how you can help me. Follow me on all platforms at Chris Cella, that's C-E-L-L-A. It's Italian. Again, Chris, C-E-L-L-A_JR. Support the show. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel if you're on YouTube or Rumble. And follow me on, of course, any other platform you're watching it on. You absolutely do not want to miss our next episode. We will be sitting down with Terry Newsom, a man who was directly targeted by the deep state and survived to tell the tale. We will dive into his incredible story and the warnings he has for the rest of us. Thank you for watching, and just a reminder, this is the show that mocks feigned moral outrage, interprets doublespeak, and will never, ever give you any disinformation or misinformation, only ever ChrisInformation. I'll see you guys next time. 2023, Vulture, which is a fitting name for an entertainment news outlet, released
Joining us now, Chris Cella.
For me on Capitol Hill and from the halls of Congress, he is on top of all the stories. Don't miss the ChrisInformation podcast.